Hi, Mr. Mamdani. My name is Michael. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I live in Israel. I'm a Zionist. And most importantly, right now for this conversation, I do not believe that you're an anti-Semite. I know that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. I know that's not what you typically hear from my demographic, but I hope I got your attention. If I did, let me give you a little bit about my background. I was born in Queens. I was raised on the Jersey Shore. I went to college in Manhattan. I graduated from NYU. I lived for the first few years after I got married in Brooklyn. Then we moved to central New Jersey, from where I commuted to New York City for 20 years. On 9/11, I was transiting the bowels of the World Trade Center about an hour before the first plane hit. I'm telling you this to give you my credentials as somebody who cares about New York, who's lived New York, who can speak to what goes on in New York, even if I can't vote in New York. I know a little about you also. I know that you are a founding member of the SJP chapter in your college. I know that you support BDS. I know that you have issues with Zionism, to say the least, that you support the right of Israel to exist, but you clearly won't say as a Jewish state. That's fair. People have a right to their opinions, to their beliefs. And again, I don't believe any of that makes you an anti-Semite. I know that there are a lot of people who equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and I personally have a real problem with that. I don't think it's true. I think there are way too many exceptions. For example, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, your city, there are probably like 100,000 Satmar Hasidim who are anti-Zionists. They're ideologically anti-Zionist. They don't believe that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. And I think anybody would be hard-pressed to call them anti-Semites. I've seen you sit with Brad Lander, and I hear how he talks about you. I've read what Michal Lesher has to write about you, and how he supports you, and how he's worked with you in the assembly. And again, these are not words of people about someone who they believe is anti-Semitic. They're both Jews. I have listened to you talk about how you very much care about protecting the Jews of New York from anti-Semitic behavior, how you want to create a task force to deal with it. And I appreciate that, and I hear it. So let me tell you what I think we have in common. I think we're both social progressives. I think we're both woke. I hate the way that term has been hijacked by people to turn into pejorative. And I think as such, we care about people. We care about human suffering. We care about human flourishing. And I think those are two things that you have talked about addressing if you became mayor of New York. And I believe, and I would imagine you believe also, that human suffering does not have to be a zero-sum game. For example, I live about 30 miles as the crow flies northwest of Gaza. For the last year and a half plus, I've occasionally heard bombing in northern Gaza. I can hear the bombing. My heart wrenches for the hostages who are tortured and suffering and dying in tunnels when I hear those bombings, and what it must feel like for them to hear them. And also, I feel for the people of Gaza, the civilians, the children who have been slaughtered by these bombs, who've been maimed by these bombs. I get it, I understand, and I can acknowledge the suffering across the board. And I think you probably can also. And you and I can talk about that, and we can share that, because it's something that's not related to politics. It's related to being a human being and caring about other human beings. So I think that's something we have in common and we share deeply, and I think hopefully many people share that. So given that commonality, I want to talk about something pretty specific, which I've heard you say and I heard you talk about. You have been often asked, do you condemn the words globalize the Intifada? And I've heard your response, and I understand the political needle that you're trying to thread. I see two tacks that you take in answering that question. One is semantic, and the other involves free speech. The semantic tack involves defining the word intifada. And you rightfully say that intifada can mean an internal struggle. We have the same concept in Judaism. We have the concept of Yetzer Hara versus Yetzer Tov, the evil versus good inclination, that we have a battle internally that we have to fight and we have to deal with. And I'm sure every religion in the world has this concept. I'm sure every group of people have this concept. It is not unique to us. But, and I think you know this, I don't believe that the people protesting against what's going on in Gaza, against Israel, against the government of Israel, mean that interpretation of intifada when they say it. I think you know that. I know it for sure. What they mean is the intifada of the early 21st century in Israel. That intifada and that word has traumatic meaning to a lot of people. And as a progressive, I believe that you understand that it's important to acknowledge how words feel to people, how ideas feel to people. Doesn't mean you should shut them down, doesn't mean you should stop people from saying them, but to acknowledge how those words are received. So when Jews around the world hear the word intifada, they're not thinking about an internal struggle, something out of a philosophy course. They're thinking about buses being blown to bits, cafes, pizzerias. They are thinking about suicide bombers with bombs strapped to their chest, packed with nails and screws that are meant to shred the flesh of children, of women, of men, of Arabs and Jews on those buses, in those cafes, and in those pizza parlors. When we hear intifada, that's what we hear. And I would even bet that a lot of the young people shouting that slogan in the streets around the world, they probably didn't even know what the intifada was. They probably just think it's an idea of harming Jewish people, Israeli people around the world for the behavior of their government. You've mentioned the terrorist attack in Boulder. You're aware of the terrorist attack in Washington, D.C., and now in Australia. I'm not the type of person, I will not make the linkage, direct linkage. We don't know what's in people's mind. I will not make the direct linkage between use of those words and those actions. But I do believe those words came from a similar place that those actions came from. The second tack you use when talking about globalized intifada is one of free speech. You basically say, from what I've heard, is that you don't want to police people's speech. And I get it. I am a free speech maximalist. Nobody holds a candle to me in free speech. I can support somebody standing on the street corner in Times Square saying globalize the intifada, saying from the river to the sea, saying Muslims are responsible for 9/11. Those are words that free speech allows you to say on the street corner. That's how free speech works. So I get the idea that you don't want to police the speech of people. You don't want to shut people down from speaking. Nobody gets that better than I do. All right, well, most people don't get that better than I do. I'm sure you get the idea. And I'm sure you understand that the antidote to bad speech like that is good speech. That's what free speech is about. If somebody's standing in that street corner in Times Square yelling that Muslims are responsible for 9/11, I can stand across the street from them and saying, no, they're not, and this is why. And that's the free speech that I can use to counter their bad speech. Same thing with globalize the intifada. It would not be policing speech for you to condemn those who use that phrase in order to incite people to harm other people. So combining these two ideas of yours, these two tactics of yours, I'd like to offer a suggestion. You're far more eloquent than I am, and you can deal with this how you'd like to deal with it. You can say it how you'd like to deal with it. But the basic idea would be this. You can acknowledge with a conditional that intifada can mean something else. But you can also acknowledge when it does mean something that is harmful, you condemn it. So for example, you could say, somebody asks you, do you condemn globalized intifada? You could throw in a conditional. You could say, well, sometimes it means something benevolent. But if people are protesting and they're using that term as a means of inciting violence against Jews around the world, against Israelis around the world, for the behavior of their government, I condemn that. I condemn the idea of people using violence to express opposition to ideas. I think if you said something like that, it would go such a long way to allowing you to help people of New York, to do what you want to do, to be the uniter that you want to be. It will take this off the plate as something that people can use against you. It will allow you to focus on your politics, your vision, your ideas. I'll be honest with you. If I were voting in New York, I'm not sure I would vote for you. Not because I think you're an anti-Semite, just because I think you might be a little too far left for me. While I might be socially progressive, I am somewhat of an economic conservative. So some of your ideas, I'm not sure I agree with. But that's a separate issue. And again, I'm not voting. But I do care about the people of New York living better, flourishing lives, not in fear of being attacked by bigots. And let's face it, whatever politics you're involved with and whatever message you think you want to give broadly to certain people, I don't think you want people who use the term globalize the intifada as incitement to harm and to terror as people on your side. So I don't think the loss of being clear on this one point would be so great to you, and I think the gain would be quite significant. You are young, you are articulate, you are thoughtful, and I believe you are caring. You have great ideas and you think outside the box. And I do believe you have a great future ahead of you, regardless of whether or not you win in November. I wish you a lot of luck in the future as your life unfolds, and I hope you take to heart what I have said. Take care and be well.